let's continue to talk about the book that the Polish writer published a few days ago, which is called The Real Lewandowski. There has also been another statement that he put out in his book in regards to Andreas Christensen that I also now want to assess. I did kind of push back on the previous Lewandowski statement that he made about how Barcelona told him to not score in those last two matches, but now I do want to speak about another statement in regards to Andreas Christensen. So this is what the book does say. In the 89th minute of the Inter-Barcelona match, in the second leg of the UEFA Champions League semifinal, when Inter were striving to equalize the score, Flick wanted to bring on Christensen to bolster the defense, but the player refused to participate on the grounds that his back was hurting, and Flick was not convinced by the excuse. Flick maintained his composure, knowing that his team would be subject to a barrage of crosses. He wanted to bring on Christensen, but the player refused. So at that point, he substituted Lewandowski for Ferran Torres in the 90th minute, but Inter Milan ultimately equalized and the match went into extra time. So clearly you can see that this statement is trying to explain that Hansi Flick had a plan. Hansi Flick wanted to use Andreas Christensen in the dying last minutes of the 90th minute game against Inter Milan to really secure the defense and make sure that Inter Milan do not score, because he knew that Inter Milan were going to make a lot of crosses into the box, try to win those aerial duels, and Christensen was the player that Barcelona needed because of his height, because of his ability to win those ground and aerial duels, and tactically it made a lot of sense for Hansi Flick. However, because Christensen refused to come in, it left Flick re-strategizing what he needed to do. He had to go to plan B. He needed to make some sort of substitution, and unfortunately that plan B did not work out for Flick nor FC Barcelona. The main story is that Christensen was too nervous to come in, that he was trying to make excuses because he did not want to deal with the pressure that the match was giving out at that time, and it was considered as very unusual behavior for a defender in a very critical moment. So I look at this, right, and I'm like, okay, is the Polish author lying again? Is the Polish author trying to create another fabricated story? So I look at the evidence, I look at what has been going on in the media, and I find some things. Like, for example, Inigo Martinez recently admitted that he couldn't sleep after matches due to the constant mental stress of holding a high defensive line, and that is exactly what Barcelona were doing against Inter Milan. It was holding a high defensive line, making sure that you make no errors. Gerard Martin was asked about this in an interview as well, and he said that he experienced the exact same thing. There were hours of adrenaline, anxiety, and overthinking play sequences before he could even calm down. Gerard Martin was really suffering when trying to hold that high defensive line, and even hours after. This is what he said exactly, and I quote, "Honestly, I also find it really hard to sleep after our games. With the level of focus and stress involved, it takes hours before I can finally switch off, just like Inigo Martinez." So I'm looking at this, right, and I'm like, okay, so we're hearing that Inigo Martinez was stressed out because of the high defensive line. Gerard Martin was also stressed out because of the high defensive line. I was also stressed out because of the high defensive line. You were also stressed out because of the high defensive line. Maybe there could be a conclusion here. Maybe a story of Christensen not wanting to come in may be true, even though there may not be no direct confirmation that Christensen literally said, "I don't want to come in because I'm nervous." We can also look at what Inigo Martinez and Gerard Martin said, and how Christensen historically has always acted under pressure. And so yes, it is true, Christensen has always been known for having anxiety and stress related physical symptoms, something that was always talked about during his time at Chelsea. Sometimes there were moments where Chelsea did not even call up Christensen because he was going through a stomach issue, and that stomach issue was through anxiety and stress because of certain situations in a game. And Flick at that time, fast forwarding to May 2024 or April 2024, knowing that he knew what Christensen had, he did not see that as an excuse, and he needed to come in. So maybe there is some evidence here. Maybe it is true that Christensen just did not want to come in. Now, many might ask, okay, if this is true, Kevin, if you're going to come to the conclusion that what the author is saying is true, and that Christensen did not want to come in because he was too nervous, because of the high defensive line, because of the evidence that Gerard Martin and Inigo Martinez said during the interviews, then why did he do so well during the 2022-2023 season under Xavi Hernandez by winning La Liga and also winning the Spanish Super Cup? And I'll tell you this, we were much more conservative back then. We played it much more safe back then. And I think that because of our more conservative approach under Xavi Hernandez, that led towards less anxiety, less stress on all of our players. It's not just the defense, but all of our players. And I think that's the reason why Christensen formed a great backline with Araujo, Balde, and Jules Koundé at that time, is because the stress was just much lower. And that is also something that Xavi Hernandez explained during multiple interviews in his first 1 to 2 years at the club. He said, "I don't want any chaos. I don't want any high anxiety. I want to play safe. I want to play more conservative. We need to be safe with the ball and demand the game." And that transmitted well towards some players who did suffer from anxiety. But with Hansi Flick, it is different. Some players just respond to the system differently. And apparently, Christensen, under the system of Hansi Flick, Flick just does not end up working well. Also, really think about this, right? Christensen hasn't really been available for Barcelona this season, but just out of nowhere, he was okay to play 90-minute matches for Denmark twice during the international break. So maybe there is something here. Maybe I think that Christensen may not just be applicable under the current Barcelona system. And I understand that some players just may not make it. And I would even say that for defenders, it can be very intense because strikers can miss chances and still be considered a hero later by scoring like a goal in the last minute. Midfielders can misplace passes, but they can also recover the ball. But for defenders, one mistake could lead to one goal. You can ask Araujo, and that one goal can cause us potential elimination. So I really do understand, and I understand where Christensen is coming from because they are the last line before the goalkeeper. They're constantly isolated in high-risk situations. They're judged publicly if things go wrong. I understand that, but at the end of the day, and I'm going to keep it real, if you're not ready to play this system, if you're not ready to really stand by what you are given and our philosophy of play, then you have to come out of the club, unfortunately. I don't care if you're Messi, I don't care if you're Maradona, I don't care if you're Beckenbauer. If you can't stand by how we play and you get nervous and you don't want to come in, then you are no longer needed in this club and you're going to have to go elsewhere. And I think that is exactly where things are going to go in the end. Christensen will leave in the summer of 2026 on a free transfer. And even though, yes, Christensen has said that he does want to stay at Barcelona and go nowhere else, it does seem like Christensen is trying to play a 4D chess move and leave for free. And most likely he could be going to Inigo Martinez's team, by the way. So very ironic, right? But he might be actually joining his teammate at Al Nassr because Al Nassr have also been interested in Andreas Christensen. That is going to be my conclusion. I don't want to put too much bad energy on Christensen because I understand that maybe this may not be laziness. It may not be disrespect coming from the player. It's just high pressure anxiety response from him. Now let's move on towards the next conversation. And I do want to speak about Rashford's form and his injury status because there has been a lot of conversations going on about whether Rashford is going to be okay for the match against Athletic Club. There is this injury scare. Now, for context, right? Rashford has been Barcelona's most decisive attacker, which is why this is big news. 6 goals and 9 assists in 16 matches, been directly involved in 15 goals overall, 2 assists in the last match versus Celta Vigo before the break, a brace against Newcastle, also recorded an assist for Harry Kane while on international duty with England. So even with Rafinha returning, Rashford does remain as a crucial player in the attack and somebody who can take his position away. And this weekend is going to be marking a emotional return for Barcelona as they go into the Spotify Camp Nou. But it does look like Rashford could be missing this game. However, there's also been a lot of more evidence that Rashford is going through just a small little injury, something that could be overcome like within the next 12 to 24 hours, and that Rashford is going to be okay. There's also been some talks about him missing training, not because of an injury, but because of a family reason. It's not injury related, and that he's going to be fully expected to feature on Saturday. So don't worry, guys. Like, I think that everything's going to be okay. Once again, I know that he did miss a training session today, but Hansi Flick is still going to be counting on him. There has been more evidence about Rashford being okay than him not being okay. I think that in the end, this was a successful international break for all players because nobody really got injured. Even with Araujo playing a lot of minutes with the Uruguayan national team, he returned early and got back into the training sessions with FC Barcelona. And we should also expect, going back to Rashford, to go back into training on Friday. Pedri does seem like he's also okay as well, but he will feature in the match against Chelsea. Yamal is also ready. Rafinha is ready. Casado is ready. And in case of worst case scenario, Hansi Flick has also called up many youngsters to get ready, just in case players like Rashford may not make it, Yamal, Rafinha, just worst case scenario. But he called up Diego Cochen, Joel Fernandez, Jofre Torrens, Tony Fernandez, Dani Rodriguez, Tommy Marquise, and Guillem Victor. All players who have been called up to provide that extra depth, and they're training with the first team. But that is it. That is going to be wrapping up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.